Hi all, my name is Ryan and welcome to my channel What the Pop, where we discuss pop culture in general and Buffy a lot. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe and click on the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. If you have friends that like Buffy or pop culture in general, share it with them. It all helps the algorithm. Before we get started today, I've set up a Patreon account to support the channel. So what would you guys want to see as rewards for your support? Keeping in mind that live things will be difficult because of the time difference of my location. Put ideas in the comments below, or better yet, become a Patreon and comment them over there. Today we start our look at Season 2 with the season opener, When She Was Bad. A plot summary. Xander and Willow are talking movie quotes. Cute moment with ice cream on the nose. Oh my god, are they about to kiss? Eek! A vampire! Oh yay! Buffy's back! Master's buried under a tree. There were robes involved. Buffy is distant. Dad bought her lots of shoes. School is back. Snyder is disgusted. Giles is gaga over Jenny. Buffy's training has visions of the Master. Gets a little intense. There are definitely issues. Dreams of being killed by the Master. Angel's in her bedroom. He misses her. She's distant. Cordy's blurting out Slayer secrets. Buffy insults her. Everyone is, Annoying child is back. Vampires dig up the Master's bone. Buffy mocks Angel. Teases Xander. Gets her Joan Collins on. Cordy confronts her. Tells her to get over it. Then Cordy gets captured. Master's grave is empty. Revivification ritual is a thing. Rock through window. Vamps have Cordy. Please come Buffy. P.S. It's a trap. Oops, psych. The trap wasn't for Buffy. Revivification ritual requires the people closest to the Master physically. And they now have a complete set. Buffy does a bit of ritualist interruptus by staking a few vampires. Angel and Xander rescue Giles, Jenny, Cordy and Willow. Buffy uses Sledgehammer to work out her issues. Next day, Buffy fears facing Xander and Willow. They tease her a little. Cut to the Anointed One who hates that girl. This was another episode written and directed by Joss Whedon, and personally I have mixed feelings about this episode. Don't get me wrong, this is a fantastic episode, and the amount of setting up it does for the season and the foreshadowing of the season is quite phenomenal when you watch it after knowing what happens. It also marks a distinct shift in tone from Season 1, a shift that really marks the maturity with which Season 2 will develop. Sure, there are still a few clunker episodes like Bad Eggs and the next episode, Some Assembly Required, but Season 2 is where Buffy finds its stride, and the tone for that begins here. So why do I have mixed feelings about it? It is one of those episodes where Buffy isn't Buffy, and these are usually some of my least favourite episodes. Yes, I'm talking about You Be a Bad. So while there is very good reason for Buffy to behave how she does, personally, I feel uncomfortable when Buffy isn't Buffy, and I also think that that's the point of this episode, that we should feel uncomfortable that Buffy has changed. The story itself is straightforward, but this episode is an emotional journey, a means to deal with the trauma of Prophecy Girl, and its effect on Buffy. And in terms of story beats, there isn't any time wasted here. We get subtle developments in Jenny and Giles' relationships, and this line.
Depends on the book.
It's delivered with exactly the same tone as the one from Season 1 in I, Robot You, Jane, when Jenny says, "That's not where I dangle it." Cordelia is once again a standout and gets quite a few great lines in this episode that I often find myself quoting, like, "Is it possible to have too much character?" There's only one moment I dislike. Actually, it's so gross to me, it is one of the few moments in all of Buffy that I actually hate, and honestly it's unforgivable, but I will talk about that later. Now I want to give a special mention to Joyce in this episode because we get some great lines from her, some insight and foreshadowing of events to come. My favourite line of hers is,
Is there the slightest chance that if I asked you what was wrong you would tell me? Of course not. Take the fun out of guessing.
I really think it's a great line because it shows Joyce trying to connect and highlights that she knows that something is wrong, that she realizes that Buffy is going through something. In terms of her foreshadowing, I'm going to talk about how this episode sets up and hints at the events of this season quite masterfully. The Buffy series as a whole doesn't deal well with issues of mental illness, either glossing over it, ignoring it completely, or worse, making light of it. Seldom is it ever directly addressed, and this is one of the few episodes that actively does so. We have to consider this in the context of their world though, because they've all been through a lot by this stage, and none of them have really had any real form of emotional trauma up until now. It has literally taken Buffy dying for there to be issues on display. Willow got attacked by vampires, Xander and Willow's friend was killed, Xander then inadvertently dusted that friend, they had magic used against them, Xander got roofied and almost raped and eaten, they got attacked by more vampires, Xander got possessed by a hyena and ate a pig, Willow was held at knife point, Willow was chloroformed, they've seen multiple dead bodies, gotten pulled into their nightmares, attacked by an invisible girl and forced to perform in a talent show. But it takes actual death for any of them to seem to suffer any ill effects from it. Of the main cast, the most extraordinary is Cordelia, who almost seems like Teflon in her ability to just shake off any incident as though it were nothing. More of an inconvenience from it interfering in her social life or clothes being damaged, rather than any lasting emotional trauma. It could be argued that up until now, Xander has been the most affected from an ongoing issues standpoint. Jesse being turned and Xander accidentally dusting him gave him an immense dislike of vampires that we see often in his interaction with Angel and later Spike. I believe this is for a couple of reasons though. The first is the most obvious one, the death of his friend. The second is his jealousy of Buffy's affection for Angel, giving him further fuel. And the third is far more subtle. I believe that part of the reason that Xander dislikes Angel in particular is that he represents a constant reminder that Jesse actually could have been saved. That his soul could have been restored into his body, and that he didn't have to be dusted. Now in this episode it is quite clear that Buffy has issues, as Giles puts it, specifically post-traumatic stress disorder. The American Psychiatric Association says people with PTSD have intense, disturbing thoughts and feelings related to their experience that last long after the traumatic event has ended. They may relive the event through flashbacks or nightmares. They may feel sadness, fear or anger, and they may feel detached or estranged from other people. These symptoms of PTSD are all on display here. Buffy has a nightmare of Giles killing her, and when he pulls off his face, he reveals it to be the Master. This is interesting because it gives a surprising depth to her fears beyond the straightforward fear that the Master could return. Analysed metaphorically, it has a number of interpretations. The first is the underlying fear that Giles is responsible for her death. As her watcher, he is the one who sends her out patrolling, and essentially puts her at risk of dying every night. As it is his job to prepare her, any failing of hers could be seen as his fault, his inability to prepare her for whatever may come. Symbolically, her ripping off Giles' mask to reveal the Master reveals a deeper fear that all men are monsters, a fear she has of her father figure, and a similar fear she has for her lover, Angel, and on a higher level, patriarchy in general. Fears that turn out to be extremely prescient given the future. Further, this episode is an early glimpse of the darker side of the Slayer, a side we see personified in Faith in Season 3. Faithful say all men are beasts. Every guy from Manimal right down to Mr. I Love the English Patient has beast in him. But Buffy doesn't only fear the beast in them. We saw in Nightmares last season that she fears becoming a monster, a beast herself. And of course we learn in the future that the Shadow Men were responsible for creating the Slayers, by infusing a girl, against her will, with the essence of a demon, thus creating a beast, and confirming Buffy's fear that she is actually a monster. Coming back to her PTSD, during her training session where she destroys the Mokujin training dummy, she experiences flashbacks to the Master. She says here, "I'm ready," and repeats it, Hypervigilance due to fear and anxiety causing a stress reaction, the fight or flight mode, is another symptom of PTSD. We see Buffy's fear a few times. From the first mention of them burying the master under the tree, Buffy looks in that direction with trepidation. When she finds out the bones of the master are gone and that the revivification ritual is a thing, she lashes out in anger based on her fear of the master returning. But another aspect of that fear is over the fact that she lost, that she was actually killed. If she can't even protect herself, how is she supposed to protect all those around her? I think this partially drives her attempts at isolation, to push the people around her away. And at one point, Buffy flat out says it. I can't do it anymore. I can't look after the three of you while I'm fighting. But she also has been through something they haven't. Actual death. And her calling puts her in danger of that happening again. So again, how could these people around her possibly understand what she is going through? How could they possibly relate? This leads to her feeling isolated, the very fear she had about her calling in the first place, the very fear we saw in Welcome to the Hellmouth. Buffy never wanted to be she alone, and now, despite having her chosen family around her, she still feels like she alone. Add to that, she's been in LA the whole summer, physically isolated from her friends. She can't tell her dad about it, and so withdrew. When she gets back, she has the same issue with her mother. Joyce asks her directly, but Buffy says nothing. What could she possibly say? Her aggression and hostility increase. Her dance with Xander, a particular highlight designed to hurt Willow, Xander, and Angel. And it comes to a head when Xander confronts Buffy over it after Willow and Giles are taken, and tells her essentially to just get over it. And she does so, by killing them all, which is a flashback to Welcome to the Hellmouth, when Angel says to Buffy that they want the same thing, to kill them all. Her response after that in Welcome to the Hellmouth was, wrong answer. What I want is to be left alone. A sentiment she has displayed all of this episode. Unhelpfully, the people around Buffy were fairly useless when it comes to her mental health. Giles recognised she had issues, but did nothing to help her deal with them. Likewise, both of her parents recognised that something was wrong and did little to address it. Joyce at least tried to talk to her about it. Cordelia and Xander both essentially just told her to get over it, which is always such useful advice to people suffering a mental health condition. Ultimately though, this episode chooses to wrap it up in a nice bow. It's an issue and then dealt with for one episode. Buffy has, as Cordelia put it, spanked her in a moppet and gotten over it. To the show's discredit, Buffy solves this mental issue, this emotional demon, the same way she deals with most of the physical demons she encounters, with violence and a beating. In the comments of one of my earlier videos, user Majufi said, I'll be interested to see your take on other examples of mental illness, as well as hopefully your examination of Xander's weird ability to be alternatively wise and empathetic, and jealous and self-centered to the point of betrayal. And I think that the latter is never more evident than it is in this particular episode. We often get moments of Xander's douchiness. I've expressed a number of them so far, and we'll see more in the future. Such as him telling Buffy that Willow said to kick his ass when she goes to confront Angelus at the end of Season 2, and when Faith goes after Angel in Season 3, Xander says, "Can I come?" Contrast these with moments like his talk with Dawn in Season 7, when he says this.
They'll never know how tough it is, Donnie. To be the one who isn't chosen. To live so near to the spotlight and never step in it. But I know. I see more than anybody realizes because nobody's watching me. I saw you last night. I see you working here today. You're not special. You're extraordinary.
Something that is quite insightful and shows a great deal of understanding. We have two moments in this episode from Xander that are so at opposite ends of the spectrum that it is hard to reconcile that they come from the same character. One of them, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the few moments in Buffy that I actually hate. and completely unjustifiable in any way. The other is so empathetic and knowledgeable and understanding that it is really hard to believe they are said by the same character only 6.5 minutes apart. The first is when Buffy comes back from the Bronze to find Giles and Willow have been taken, and Xander says, "If they hurt Willow, I'll kill you." This line is indefensible. No amount of anger, guilt, or whatever can justify Xander saying this, especially when the circumstances of this episode and the kidnapping make it so. Xander blames Buffy for Willow being taken, but that is unfair of him to do so. They all thought the trap was for Buffy. None of them realised that it was to get Willow and Giles until it was way too late. I understand that Xander may also be feeling guilt at being unable to defend Willow, especially when he failed to do so earlier in the episode as well, when Buffy had to save them both. And that's why he directs his anger at Buffy. But "I'll kill you" is not just crossing the line, it's going so far over the line that the line is no longer visible. But 6.5 minutes later, after Buffy has killed the vampires trying to resurrect the Master, in the lull after the fight, Willow says, "It's over." And then Xander, with a great deal of insight, says, "No, it's not." Buffy didn't hear him. He only said it to Willow. But Buffy then picks up the sledgehammer and smashes the Master's bones to dust before bursting into tears as Angel holds her. Xander understood here that Buffy needed that release, that the issue of the Master coming back was one of her fears, and that smashing those bones meant the revivification ritual couldn't be attempted again in the future. Xander's dichotomy, his ability to simultaneously be incredibly insightful and empathetic, and also incredibly self-centered and jealous, are the reason that he plays the everyman role in the show. He isn't a one-dimensional caricature of a character. He's fully realised with insight and love and empathy and bravery and fear and jealousy and selfishness. In other words, he's exceptionally human. And though we are sometimes repulsed by the things he says and does, we are moved by others, and that's why we relate to him so much. As I said before, this episode does a lot to set up this season, from things we will see through the season all the way to the fight between Angel and Buffy at the end of the season. All are foreshadowed here. I put most of this in the order it appeared in the episode. When Willow and Xander are playing the movie line game in the opening scene, one of the movies is Terminator, and the line specifically is, "In the short time that we had, we loved a lifetime's worth." In Terminator, Kyle Reese is sent back in time to protect Sarah Connor, who herself will become a warrior in Terminator 2. We learn later that Angel fell in love with Buffy when he first saw her when she was first called as a Slayer in LA, and that him coming to Sunnydale was in order to help and protect her. Now, our two main characters in the Terminator essentially fall in love, even with everything going on, and have one night together. And that's all they will get, which will result in the birth of John Connor, who leads a resistance against Skynet. With Buffy and Angel, the feelings from season 1 will grow, and later this season, Buffy and Angel will spend one night together. And then everything will change when he loses his soul and reverts to Angelus. Although Angel will return and Buffy and him will keep drifting back together, they never really work. So the likeness to Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor is fairly obvious here. We get a scene with Joyce and Buffy's dad, and Joyce says something like, "Welcome to my world. I just hope Buffy makes it through the school year," which of course she doesn't, because Snyder expels her. And Snyder says about Buffy that he can smell trouble, expulsion, and the faintest aroma of jail. And during this season, he is constantly on Buffy's case, threatening expulsion. At the end of the season, we have the issue with Drusilla killing Kendra and the police blaming Buffy. And even though Snyder knows that Buffy is innocent, he expels her for it as a liability to the school. When Buffy takes the bait and goes to rescue Cordelia at the Bronze, she has an interaction with Angel that sets up our season finale. Buffy says, "Come on, you must have thought about it. You're a vampire, I'm a slayer. What would happen if we fought? Who would win? Go ahead, kick my ass." And this quote clearly sets up the Buffy versus Angelus arc of the season. Now the key moment in that fight scene in the finale is when Angela says, "Now that's everything, huh? No weapons, no friends, no hope. Take all that away and what's left?" And Buffy replies, "Me." She catches Angelus' sword thrust and kicks his ass. And we get a hint of that here when Angel says, "You have to trust someone." And she replies, "I trust me." I've already covered most of the things of note in this episode, so I'll just end with my favourite quote.
We need you to distract the vampires.
Right.
What are you gonna do?
I'm gonna kill them all. But how to distract them?
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this look into the Buffyverse, please like, subscribe to the channel, and consider supporting me through Patreon. If you've disagreed with anything I've said, or have anything else I missed, please put it in the comments below. And I'll see you next video.